Morning, everybody. Welcome to Pardea. Today, we're starting a small series called Symbols of Violence. And Sheena and I, we've discussed this numerous times. Sheena's here with us today. So, Sheena, how's it
Hey,
going?
Daniel. Good on you, Daniel.
Good, thank you. So, symbols of violence, what is the first one that comes to mind when we speak about symbols of violence?
Well, I actually want to just talk more generally and say
Okay.
that, I was having a discussion with two people last night about, what the future holds. We have the US elections. We have, the state capture stuff going on in South Africa. We have deeper inequality here. And this one person was saying that, well, if Biden gets in, there are going to be lockdowns all over the world, and kind of that type of vibe. And then this person was kind of convincing me that, or trying to discuss with me that, this is kind of a social engineering experiment to try and control human beings. And I was saying, I think we arrive at the same conclusion that the pandemic and the conditions of the pandemic and the lockdown are terrible, but how we get there, I have different ideas on how we get there. And I think, as I said to them last night, I think we're living in conditions similar to around the Second World War, where there was a lot of disinformation and disinformation, aka propaganda. The line between what's true and what's false becomes less and less easy to discern, doesn't it?
Yes.
But from my point of view, I feel that all of humanity needs to introspect and reflect and start with the starting point that most adults, particularly adults in the Western world or of the Western world, of the capitalist acquisitive society, are cruel, self-centered, and hell-bent on consuming and acquiring as much as possible, gathering for themselves as much as possible. And I think therein lies the both the seeds and the symptoms of violence. And so on our anti-racism program, sorry, just to go back there. So when we arrive at this point where lockdowns are terrible, and it's terrible that people don't get to see their families, and I had my daughter in hospital. I couldn't see her. It was terrible. It was terrible. But from my point of view, the lockdown is an inevitability of what's gone before. The pandemic is an inevitability of what's gone before. It's how we are in the world, how we give ourselves permission to be in the world, the extent to which we give ourselves permission to be cruel. And you and I are vegans, Daniel. I think it'll be 3 years for me in January since I've been a strict vegan, probably longer for you. But we don't get to say we're not cruel in this world, do we? No. We don't get to say that we still don't partake in systems that are cruel to other beings, because the reality is we participate in these complex constructs, and we don't actually know. But I know from conversations we've had, we've committed to when we become aware that we are participating in something cruel, we will consciously try to withdraw our partaking in that. Now, as a white person in South Africa, for me to withdraw my participation in a system that advantages me by exploiting the majority in South Africa, which still exists, I still partake in that, I still participate in that. It's a very complex thing to properly extricate yourself from it, isn't it? It's complex. Yes. But I think the starting point is the knowledge and the acceptance that I still do participate in that system. I still do. And I have a responsibility to actively go out and dismantle the system. I'm participating in a land transformation dialogue this afternoon. I don't have the details right now, but I'll send them to you when I do it, some sort of panel discussion. So our anti-racism work, as you know, Daniel, is to interrupt specific things that hold people in oppressive states. So from the work we do in taxi violence in the Western Cape to the work we do in shielding shack dwellers from violent evictions, that's anti-racism work, because that stuff happens because of systemic, deeply entrenched racist systems. And we can have discussions on those in detail in further podcasts, and I think that we should. But on our anti-racism dialogue recently, we were talking about, the kind of results of the lockdown, weren't we? We were talking about the alcohol ban, weren't we? Mm-hmm. And we were kind of musing over how people will try to apprehend their so-called freedoms by saying, don't take away our alcohol and cigarettes from us.
Yes.
Isn't that ironic? Isn't that ironic?
And it's coming back to the Western culture of individualism and how important the individual is. And it's like, I need my cigarettes and I need my alcohol, but we don't actually ask ourselves, what is that effect on society now that we've banned all of these things? Yes. And obviously there will be statistics coming out and showing the impact that it has of people just not drinking for 6 weeks or 2 months. I can't remember how long it was. And this is also very interesting because I'm on one of the family groups. Someone was posting an article about how ridiculous the ban is and we need to stand together and this and that. And I just typed in there, this was kind of like after the first initial ban, and it was kind of, I think there were talks about reintroducing alcohol sales or of the sort. And I typed in a message. I was like, yeah, this is a really interesting conversation that we should be having. And what is the actual effect on our society? What is, there are so many alcoholics out there. People, women and children are being abused by, their partners or fathers or people in the household who are alcoholics. And now it's suddenly stopped, just imagine that kind of like relief that these people have now felt. And now suddenly this is now brought back, what kind of society are we living in? Should we be promoting these kind of things that actually, in a sense, enslave us? Because a lot of it is in slavery. And I mean, this is also where we spoke about, where in the Western Cape, where in one of the communities, was it 6 or 7 taverns were opened or allowed in one street, and then the street next to that, a nursery which was supposed to be open so that these parents actually can go and drink, so that their kids are at least in a safe environment, that was actually not allowed to just open
Not
that nursery.
allowed. Yeah.
So these kind of things,
Yeah.
and I mean, then the conversation, on the WhatsApp group, it was kind of like no one responds except for one person that says, yes, this is actually a really conversation that we should be having. These abuses that happen in the homes because of alcohol, but people are not ready to talk about this.
Yeah.
And I mean,
No,
you
we're not.
the
Yeah.
work that you're doing. I mean, you've mentioned previously that 80% of the work that you do is because of the abuse of alcohol.
Yeah. Look,
And we should.
in my domestic violence, sexual violence, and matters where assault is involved, I would say over the last 24 years, if there hadn't been alcohol in play, I'd have 80% less matters like that. 80% less, easily. Violence is so complicated by abuses of power, abuses of substance. So it's a very complex thing. In that particular conversation, we were talking about how the use of alcohol is sadly interwoven into the fabric of the pain that South Africans carry. So we know that there's been a system that still exists, particularly on the wine farms, where people were paid partially in wine, weren't they? And partially in alcohol. And the one thing is that has created generations of alcoholics, domestic violence, disease, gangsterism, all that
Poverty.
kind of thing. Yeah. And it's generational. And we spoke about neurofeedback with McGill and Eleanor the other day. We haven't spoken about the epigenetics, about how traumas are passed down from generation to generation in the DNA.
Yes.
So we can't just draw a line in the sand and say it was like this, up until then, now it's like this, everyone must just get on. There's generational stuff over 4 centuries. There's stuff that still endures today. And the Friday afternoon braai for employees, where there's alcohol, yes. There's kind of like a bit of a, well, here's something to soothe your pain, isn't it? We're not really going to pay you a livable wage, but here's a braai or some alcohol or whatever, and you can
here's a way to start your weekend.
You can forget about your pain. Don't go and sit over the weekend and actually think about your pain, because that might spur you on to do something about it.
Yes. And here's the way to start your weekend, so that you can just continue this until Monday morning. Yeah. And we'll see you on Monday. Cheers. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's and the interesting part of that conversation for me was, you said, Dan, a braai actually is a symbol of violence. And it is.
I mean, if anybody who's been at yes, exactly, and anyone who's been at one, or a barbecue or braai, will know that, well, first of all, there is alcohol consumption. Second of all, the conversations that go around these environments are often very violent and toxic. And then second of all, we're sitting there obliviously, and I mean, I'm saying obliviously because I never really made that connection either. But we've slaughtered these animals. We've paid someone else to slaughter these animals that we just put onto this fire or this symbol and to enjoy ourselves. And then we have a couple of drinks and it's quite weird when you actually realize what this is about and you put yourself in that environment, and then suddenly you're like, wow, this is a very strange world. Why do we do this?
There's this victim on the braai, or body parts of multiple victims on the braai. There's this kind of ceremonial separation of male and female, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't it? There's often very toxic, especially male talk. Especially as people get drunker and drunker around this very symbolic age-old ceremony. And look, I think we're venturing into very difficult territory here. Very difficult territory, aren't we? But it bears discussion because it's around the braai, around these victims that have been tortured and then slaughtered, that will have these kind of accusing discussions. Will take up the position of accuser that starts with this country, this government, these people. And then, hey, I need to go. Okay, well, let me just phone and check with my mate, where the roadblocks are. No, but, I've got 1,000 rand in the glove compartment. I'm fine. With no sense of irony that we've just had this kind of raging conversation about the corrupt in this country. And then we all kind of disperse into our own corrupt ways. And it brings us back to kind of what have we done in this world? How have we been cruel in this world? In what ways do we give ourselves permission to be cruel in this world, to be selfish in this world, to acquire as much as we can at the expense of whomever in this world?
Mm-hmm.
It's still a big problem, isn't it?
It is.
And each one of us has some of that dismantling to do, don't we?
Yes, and this is also where Robin DiAngelo, in her talk about white fragility, where she says that you coming out of the restroom and there's your skirt is tucked into your your skirt is high up, or there's a piece of toilet paper stuck to your shoe, and you come and tell me, oh, listen here, there's some toilet paper stuck on your shoe, and you're like, how dare you tell me? How dare you look at me? How dare you insinuate that I've got anything wrong with me? And how can we, it's coming back to and this is also, someone once mentioned to me in a workshop, part of their talk was that if I say something to you and you yourself get upset about it, then that is something for you to work on, because there's something within yourself that is not 100%. And this is what I always say, is that if I get irritable about something or someone, I actually need to go sit with that, because there's something that I haven't dealt with that I need to listen to, because and this is again why we should be having these conversations, because instead of getting upset about it, let's actually talk about it, and let's hear what someone else has to say. Another opinion might actually be enlightening, and me myself, I might not actually know enough about the subject, so please tell me if I'm doing something wrong. And that's why we're having these conversations.
It is, Dan, and I just had to mute my mic because
Oh, yeah, there's a bit of action going on in the background, but that's fine.
we call it dog back, you know,
Yeah.
feedback, dog back. Yeah, so I think what we need to do is start asking the question, how what are the symbols of violence around us? How are we immersed in them unconsciously? How are we immersed in them? How do we, in what ways have we cut off our ability to feel that in this way or that way we're being cruel? And you know what are those things? What are the any number of things that we are so immersed in that, you know, we can walk past a television and see incredible suffering and really not feel that, or we can
go to the mall and, oh, there's a latest sale. This item is to buy for 50 Rand. Yet that item, someone had to make that item and was probably done under some very harsh conditions, because as we know, the fashion industry itself, there's a lot to be, you know, to come to terms with. So even myself, you know, I've, you know, willy-nilly bought items and thought, you know, oh, this is a nice bargain. I can wear it a couple of times. If it tears or breaks or whatever, oh well, I only paid $50 for it, or whatever the amount is that you've bought your item for. Those items come with, there is a deeper price attached to that item. And yes, I wasn't aware of this until someone made me aware of this. So a lot of these things, you know, are are in our midst, and we're not aware of these. So
I mean, this smartphone or smart device that we are speaking from, Daniel, I need to just do
okay,
something about
we'll wait a moment.
I caught the one at the end of the other one still at large. Yeah, so we might still hear a little bit of barking, but yeah, I mean, these smart devices we talking from, who makes them and under what conditions? Yes. You know, and how do we extricate ourselves from that? How do we do it?
Well, I think for me at least, one of the answers is, well, do I need the latest iPhone? I mean, my phone still, I've had it for 2 years. Oh wow, do I need the latest newest trend? Do I, you know? And at the end of the day, I mean, yes, cell phones have evolved over the past 20 years tremendously, but it's at the end of the day, it's pretty much the same deal that I got last time. It still works perfectly fine. It can still do all the functions that it's got, you know. And we have to ask ourselves, yes, do I really need to buy a new jersey? Do I really need to buy a new phone? Do I really need to partake in this tremendous need to consume? And also at the end of the day,
acquisitiveness, this insatiable acquisitiveness.
Yes. And, you know, it'll make, you know, whatever is blasted on marketing and adverts and whatever, oh, you need the latest of this and you need this new thing and this will make your life better, and once you have this, you'll be happy. And I think this is also where it comes down to, you know, finding that happiness within yourself, because otherwise, if you don't, you'll constantly want to go project it outwards to your environment and say, oh, if I get this job interview, you know, or if I get this job, then I'll be happy. If I have this amount of money, or if I, you know, it's all about what is out there and what is in the future. But it's because I recently finished the book of Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, which is absolutely amazing. You've read it yourself as well.
Yeah, I'm actually rereading it for a second time. I'm halfway through my second read of it, and it's I think if we were more present to the moment, we would automatically be less violent, wouldn't we?
Yes.
Because violence comes from a projected kind of fear. I'm not going to have enough in the future, or that person's coming for me, or whatever. It's where we project ourselves into the future, which is called worry, and or we dwell on the past, which is we're not present to the moment. So Eckhart Tolle says one of the best ways to actually dismantle trauma triggers, for example, is to go and look at a flower, to go and really look, and he says that that 90% of what is significant about that flower cannot be seen. 90% of everything that we need cannot be seen. It's oxygen, it's the water that we made up of. It's the inner workings, the intricacies of every cell. And he says that, any kind of observation of nature is incredibly grounding. And so, we've heard about mindfulness and being present for the last decade. And, some of us, like me, have never really thought it through, what this stuff is all about. But there are practical ways. There are really practical ways to start extricating ourselves from the violent patterns of this world, to start saying no thanks. And the easiest way is to take the victim off our plates. And maybe we can make a challenge every week, or every time that we have these discussions on symbols of violence, to just maybe get our listeners to commit to one thing, like drop one meal a week where you have a victim on your plate. Replace that with a delicious sweet potato and salad of all kinds of crunchy stuff, and avo and seeds and stuff like that. Is there anything more delicious than a meal like that? Is there? No, there isn't. But it's actually a lot easier than we think. We think we're powerless, and we're not powerless. We are powerful. Each one of us is powerful. Each one of us has the power to create. We have the power to destroy.
Yes.
With our words, starting with our thoughts. And we've got to become aware, deeply aware, profoundly aware of our power, and start saying that everything we think matters, everything we say matters, and everything we do matters. And start with the small stuff, or the stuff that we thought was small, and the stuff that we thought was insignificant, and start changing from the inside out. Yeah.
Yes.
So is there a challenge in there for people, Dan?
I think there is. Well,
do you want to pack
let's not make it one-sided. So anybody who feels that they can drop one meal a week and doing a cruelty-free, or at least take the meat off the plate, they're welcome to do that. But also, if anybody thinks that there's anything else that we have missed that contains any form of violence that we might not be aware of, you can let us know, and we can even explore that and maybe have that
And
on a
challenge
further
us.
podcast.
Challenge
Yes,
us, you know, send a
exactly.
challenge our way. And
Yes.
yeah, the challenge is on. Let's see how many kind of symbols of violence we can extricate ourselves from, and let's do a little bit of a study and say let's see how lives change. Let's see how lives change. What are you and I going to commit to this week? What are we going to commit to?
I think maybe perhaps questioning certain products that we use in our homes, like beauty products, because those can also contain lots of violence. Because I think that is maybe something that I've overlooked in the past. Maybe we can come up with something, a different alternative to it, because they are out there. We must just go look and find. I don't know, you and your
Why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? Look, I've got Che, who's an ingredients power reader, so nothing much slips by her. So cosmetically and all that kind of thing, we quite self-aware. But why don't we do this? Let's take a one night a week smartphone fast, and we ask people to either do that with us or to drop the victim from their plate on that particular night a week. Should we do that?
Perfect.
Which night should we
Yes,
do?
I think we should do Friday night.
Friday night smartphone fast. That's excellent, because
Perfect.
in Jewish tradition, and your husband is an adherent, that's the night of, what do you call it? Shul. No, you better
Yes.
ask them. Yeah.
I'll better ask. Yes.
Yeah. So you're not meant to use electricity and all that kind of thing anyway. So
Yes.
Friday night smartphone fast and no victims on the plate. So
Perfect.
put that challenge out there, Dan. Put it up. Let's spread the word, and let's have more of these conversations. And
Yes.
we will, I think, for our next Symbols of Violence podcast, we'll invite others to come and share. And we can even invite people to talk about violent experiences, and we can start connecting these dots, because, as we always say, all oppressions are interconnected. Where we give ourselves permission to be cruel in one way, we're probably giving ourselves permission to be cruel in all kinds of ways. That's why I got to a point where I felt that my work in human rights is incomplete if I'm still giving myself permission to use, abuse, exploit animals. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think
Shall we
that is
leave it
it,
there?
and you'll leave it at that. Yes. Thank you so much, and then we'll see you soon. Cheers.
Thanks, Dan. Cheers. Bye.